Hello there, and welcome to Paranormal Investigation Stories number 10. This particular investigation was undertaken on behalf of the landlady of a private residence in Rastrick in West Yorkshire, following the reports from a couple who had moved in that they had nothing but problems for 8 weeks. Various paranormal activities, the hearing of footsteps, loud bangs from the cellar, etc., etc. The landlady found that Haunted Yorkshire Paranormal Group, which I was proud to be a part of at the time, along with Dawn, Russ and Joan, were quite happy to go along and investigate these problems that they were having. On arrival at the home, we were greeted by the present owners, who sat talking to us, and they had kind of kept a diary of what had been going on over the past 8 weeks. Things they had heard, things they had seen, and the fact that the family's pet dog used to run in circles and bark around the dining table. So much so that they'd actually taken the dog to the vet, and at a cost of goodness knows how much, the vet had told them that it was because the dog was depressed. It was suffering anxiety. That may have been the case, but as this story goes on, perhaps we'll reveal a little more of maybe why the dog was actually running round as it was. On entering the home, everything felt fine down on the ground floor. No problems at all as such. Russ and I went upstairs into one of the bedrooms. We'd been there about 5 minutes, and I had entered into a spiritual zone, whatever you want to call it. As many call it the alpha state, where you are aware of everything beyond the normal realm that you dwell in. And I became aware of 2 spirits. There was a mother and a daughter. The mother insisted on being called Kathleen. There was no chance of calling her Kathy or Kath. She wished to be addressed as Kathleen, and her daughter was called Sarah. I would say that Kathleen was in her late 50s, and the daughter was between, 8 and 9 years old, something like that. So she'd been quite a late mother. Kathleen had been a person who had seeked out a career, and she had become a school teacher. And as being a school teacher, she still portrayed that sternness and severeness that a school mistress of that time would have. She demanded respect. And this is one of the reasons that she demanded to be called Kathleen. Both these particular spirits were grounded there. And Kathleen told me that they had actually passed away due to some form of explosion. Now, whether that was a gas explosion or an explosion within wartime, I really don't know. I just know there was some form of explosion which carried both of them into the other side of life. We went back downstairs and entered the cellar, and this time the owner of the property or the tenant of the property, actually came down into the cellar with us. And in this area, they had said they had heard so many loud noises over just that 8-week period that were there. While we were down there, we all sat around in kind of a circle, I suppose, and the camera was set up. The camera was facing directly at myself and Dawn, and behind us was a stone shelf, and on this stone shelf was a cardboard box. As I concentrate now, thinking about that event, I can still see the box sat there. We sat there for quite a while. We were calling out, asking if anyone was there. Can you please give us a sign, make a noise, etc. And you must bear in mind at this point that we were in the basic darkness. The only light was coming from the back of the night vision camera. And all of a sudden, as it was calling out, there was a really loud bang, which was behind Dawn. And I'll be honest, it was the first time I'd ever heard Dawn swear. It shocked her and it shocked everyone else that was in the vicinity. We had a look round, we flashed the torches, and there was absolutely nothing to say there was nothing had fallen, the cardboard box was still there. Everything was just as it was, but there had been this loud bang. And while we were in there, we also heard what appeared to be a dragging sound, as though someone was dragging something on the floor above. We heard that several times, and we radioed back upstairs to Russ, who was in the kind of base that we set up, and he had reported to hear no noise whatsoever. There was nothing going on the upper floor. So what we heard was as though something was being pulled across the kitchen floor above us. While I was down there, I noticed that there was kind of a staircase. There were steps still there, which just led up to the cellar roof. And you could see that there had been alterations, and as though there had been new woodwork fitted in certain areas. And it became very clear to me that at one point these stairs would have led to a door, either a trap door in the floor or a doorway itself, which would have led directly to where the kitchen table now stood. We went back upstairs to have a look round, and the dog was still running round, barking as it ran round. And this dog, for whatever reason, I believe, and don't correct me here, but I believe it was a Rottweiler. And this is all it did, was run round the table barking until I entered the kitchen area. And when I entered the kitchen area, the dog sat by my side all the time. It was by my leg. Wherever I went, the dog was there. The tenant of the house believed that the dog could pick things up from me, which made it feel more comfortable, which made it happier in that environment. And as I sat and pondered, it came to me that the reason that the dog did run round the table, where the doorway used to be, is because of the possibility that it could see a former owner of the house coming up through the stairs and entering the kitchen. Therefore, the dog could see the spirit walking through the floor into that kitchen area. And that's what it was barking at, because it could see, as we've mentioned before, the stone tape theory, where the building actually contains memories within the stone. It's there within the stone. Sorry, spirit of death. It's there within the stone. Residual energy. which this dog could still see to this day, and that is why it ran around in circles. After another visit to the lounge, where we found everything was quiet and peaceful, nothing at all to report from there, we decided to go back upstairs, where there was a sort of corridor with a landing, I suppose you would call it, that had three different doors, 4 with the bathroom, leading off it. And it was at this point that another spirit impressed itself upon me. And this spirit was called Charlotte. And I believed at the time she was around 45 years old and had died. Again, I cannot honestly remember, but I would put a figure in the 1950s, sometime like that she had passed away. And as I spoke with Charlotte, I asked her if she was happy with the family who lived there. And her reply was quite garbled, and she said that she didn't understand why there was another family living in the home. I asked her if she did not want that family there. She said she didn't mind the family, but she was afraid of the dog. She did not like the dog at all. As I spoke with Charlotte, it became quite clear that she had what today would be classed as a learning disability. She was actually someone who suffered with Down syndrome. She was a very happy-go-lucky girl, and her life had been cut tragically short through natural circumstances, inasmuch that because Down syndrome people have heart conditions, it was a heart condition that had taken her away. She admitted to me that she was the one responsible for all the footsteps that they could hear on the upper floor, which made me kind of smile, because it was nice to know that she was there and making them know that she was there. She didn't want to be ignored. We left that part of the investigation and went back downstairs because most of us were feeling very drained. There was a very draining energy within the atmosphere of the home. And as we sat chatting, the tenant of the house asked us what we had found. And I mentioned to her about Kathleen and Sarah, who I at first encountered in the first bedroom. And I also mentioned about Charlotte, the girl with the woman with Down syndrome. At this, the tenant got up and she passed me a photograph album which had been found in the basement, the cellar of the house. It had been left behind by whoever, we don't know. And as I looked through the photograph album, there was a moment I will never forget, because of the confirmation which it gave to me to the fact that I had actually seen who I had seen. It was total confirmation. Right there within this photograph album were several black and white photos, and underneath those photographs were written Kathleen and Sarah. This brought quite a chill to several people within the group. The hairs were standing up on their arms, etc. But it was so nice again to receive that confirmation that I had actually seen Kathleen and Sarah. We asked the current tenants if they would like these spirits moved over. But once we had explained that there was nothing more to fear, nothing to worry about, and that the spirits were all benign, they were quite happy to let them stay. They were quite happy to let them share their lives with them. With regard to the dog, we just said to them, maybe it would be kinder or better for yourselves if you kept the dog out of the kitchen. With the area where the door used to be and the spirits coming through. That would cause stress for the dog, but removing the dog from the situation would also alleviate that situation. And they agreed that that was a good idea. Whether they did that or not at the end of the day, we don't know. Because on that note, we all departed and left the investigation. And it was one again, which had amazing evidence, particularly with the photograph album of Kathleen and Sarah. And as I speak of Kathleen and Sarah, I can still see her to this day going like this to me, waving a finger at me, as though I'm doing something wrong. But bless them, they're there, and hopefully they will remain there, in the home where they once lived. I thank you again for listening, and again, if you are liking it, please subscribe to the channel, click like, hit the bell for further updates. And the next investigation I will be uploading is, I believe, a house in Heckmondwike in West Yorkshire. Again, another very interesting investigation. And I will leave you all at this point. Thank you all once again for listening, and me and my hand here will thank you, wave you goodbye, and we will say Namaste.